All right, our next speaker is Dave Mercer from Dave Mercer Consulting.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is David Mercer, as he mentioned, and I own and operate DMC, an IT-based company based in Napa Valley, California. Oh, there's the remote. I found my remote. It's likely you've been asked about this stuff, if not actually told to integrate it in your networks. We aim to help you understand the terminology and technologies involved in these services and guide you in the best practices to choose from and implement them. Is my button working? All right, I'm just going to do it here. Here's a high level of what we're going to be talking about today. Acronyms. This is just acronyms. We're also going to talk about network considerations, what you need to look out for in your networks when you're planning these deployments. Endpoints, which are also known as phones, but also mobile apps, web apps, etc. And configuration options, how to configure these things, how to make your life easier. So let's get this out of the way. This industry loves acronyms. Even before VoIP came along, which incidentally you'll hear me say VoIP or VoIP interchangeably, depends on how much of a hurry I'm in. But the phone network has been acronym heavy since its beginning. The first one, the basic one, is VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol. And that's just phone service, basically. Then you have PSTN, which is the Public Switch Telephone Network. It's also known as POTS, or plain old telephone service. Like I said, acronyms. And then finally we have UCaaS. This UCaaS is a newer term, and it's thinking about communication services as a whole, encapsulating traditional desk phones, mobile service, voice, video, text services, thinking outside the phone box. And then we have PBX, which is Private Branch Exchange. Think of that as just the system that runs your phone service. It's a server, basically. SIP. This is the protocol the device used to set up a call and terminate a call. RTP, which is real-time transmission protocol, that's what's actually sending the voice packets. It's just shoves them out there and hopes for the best, versus the SIP, which actually says, hey, do you hear me? Yes, I hear you. I have a call for you. Okay, I'm ready to answer. That kind of thing, where there's a back and forth. Both SIP and RTP are necessary to have a functional phone call. They're both required. There are other protocols out there for other systems, but these are kind of the default now. Almost all systems use this technology. And then finally we have hosted versus on-prem. Again, that's a bit of a shortcut, whether the system is hosted at a third-party location or the cloud, or an on-premise system where there's one or more servers that are actually sitting at the customer's site that translate that VoIP traffic on their network to regular telephone lines or other devices from there. Hosted is much more common in a modern installation nowadays, so that's primarily what we're going to be talking about. But on-site premises systems still do get used. There's lots of reasons that they might be required. Maybe your internet is not great and it's not going to get great, but you want to be able to capitalize on some of this technology. So you might have traditional telephone line feeds coming in, but VoIP internally. And that kind of brings us to hosted SIP trunks. And this is kind of an in-between step, where you might have a new phone system with lots of fancy bells and whistles, or it does really cool things or specific things for your industry, and you can't just swap out generic phones. SIP trunking is a way of replacing the telephone lines, whether that be coming in on a T1 or other, just standard, POTS lines, with an internet feed. So you get the benefits of cost savings and potential redundancy, etc., but not have to go and buy all new phones and switch everything out and maybe lose your paging that you have in your systems that doesn't work on VoIP systems. It's kind of like an in-between step, and it can actually save companies quite a bit of money if they're not ready to jump whole hog into a hosted or on-premises system. So what can this stuff do for you? It can give you location independence. You're no longer tied to your desk. VoIP service gives someone the ability to be anywhere in the world, with a connection to the internet anyway, and remain in communication. This can be anything from a desk phone to a mobile device to a desktop or a laptop. It allows you to have staff anywhere and have a presence anywhere you want. You need a Los Angeles office? No problem. Just get an LA number and you're set. You can work at home much easier, of course. That is a double-edged sword, as I think we all know in this room. That can be a real problem. But an example of that is in Napa, where I am based. We had those kind of nasty fires 2 years ago. And in my office, I had no power, no internet, no cell for 5 days, which would be a problem. And it was, an issue for me. But because my workforce is distributed, because we could be mobile, or people were actually in other cities that were unimpacted, we actually operated as normal. We'd get calls from our various customers in the affected areas, like, hey, what can we do? We're not going to be able to do things. Some people could just pick up their telephones and move it to their in-laws' home or to another office, plug them in and be operational. Other people can use the mobile app on the phone. So as long as I can get somewhere with cell signal, which was a problem initially, I can still use the system. And because we're distributed and the system wasn't there, we can also simply reroute calls to cell phones or to other telephone numbers. One of our clients had a wireless internet provider, and the tower they were getting their internet from burned down. So they weren't going to get internet anytime soon. Telephone lines even were kind of up and down, but we actually rerouted their calls to an old fax line that they still had active, and built a custom auto attendant letting people know, hey, this is what's going on, we're going to reduce capacity, we're doing everything we can, etc. That didn't stop some of their customers from complaining why their shipments weren't there. And we're like, fires, hills. But anyway, it lets you kind of get away from something that people might think of as a disadvantage, like, oh, these systems don't work if you don't have power or internet. Well, true, but also not, because the system doesn't live there. The auto attendant works, the voicemail works, everything still flows. And if you can get somewhere with an internet connection, you can keep working. On a traditional phone system, if your lines go down, you're done, if of surviving any given internet issue. And then references. Like any company, do the work, check your references. It's always best to hear from other customers what their experience has been. They shouldn't be hesitant to provide this. They should have a list of customers. And yeah, we all know that there are customers that they know are happy with them. But if they don't even have that or don't want to let you talk to anybody, that's again a warning sign. There are lots and lots of VoIP providers out there. Many of them run their networks a lot tighter and harder than they should, so they have capacity issues. And the uptime and the references can kind of show you that. I know our prospective clients often ask us, hey, do you have some references that we can check for people who have this system? And our answer is, sure, here they are. And yeah, again, there are people that we know are happy with us, but they're there and they're happy to talk to our clients. We've gotten permission from our clients that it's okay to give this information out. SLAs, anybody, just show of hands, how many knows what an SLA is? A good number. That's a service level agreement. Essentially, it's a guarantee. We are going to provide you this much uptime. If we don't, we will pay you, essentially. If we promise you 99.99% uptime and we got to 99.9, we owe you, $400 or whatever. That keeps them on their toes. If a provider has an SLA, it's a good chance that they're a good provider because they are willing to put their money where their mouth is. If they screw up and have a network outage or a system outage, they know they're going to pay for it, so they try really hard to make sure that doesn't happen. And again, that's one of those kind of just good signs if a company has an SLA. And you also want to know is that, does it apply to planned outages as well as unplanned outages? A 99.999% uptime is great, but not if they don't count the twice a month, updates that they have to run. And it's not so good. And then finally, support. We all know support is a big thing. How easy it is to get a hold of them, how long do you have to stay on hold with them. We have picked up a number of customers from Comcast and Vonage and AT&T specifically because of that. They had no other reason or interest in anything the system did. They were just tired of calling and waiting on hold. And knowing that they could pick up the phone and get us was the reason. I actually had a law office who said, boy, I just don't like AT&T. Do you guys do that? And I'm like, well, yeah, we do that for phone service. And I started giving the spiel. You can do this, and you can have auto attendance and voicemail via email and all this stuff. Like, I don't care about any of that. Will I have an AT&T bill anymore? No. Great, I'll sign up. That was it. Because a lot of these providers, AT&T especially, has become bad at this. What they do when the contract expires is they jack the rate up to 2 or 3 times what it is normally, knowing the customer will call when they get this huge bill. And they'll say, hey, we can get you this great deal. All you got to do is sign up for another 5 years. Okay. Boom. And then they're locked in. Because AT&T is losing customers, and they know that. They're not quite there to the digital revolution so much as Comcast is. And so you got to watch out for those kind of things. But yeah, I've had people, they don't care about any of the features that it does. They just don't want to deal with those people anymore. They don't want to deal with Vonage. They don't want to deal with Comcast phone support, which who would? They just want something that works, and when it doesn't, they want to be able to call. And from our standpoint, that goes to, do we want to deal with that? Do I want to, when my client's having a problem on the phone and something's not working, do I want to sit on call for 45 minutes? Nope. So I'm going to ask them those questions. What's the typical hold time? If they're not available by phone 24/7 by 365 days a year, what are their support hours? What is the process after those normal support hours? In our case, our vendor isn't 24/7 live telephone support. But I know if I put a ticket in via email or call, in less than 10 minutes, they're calling me with their on-call guy. That works. That's fine for me. I'm okay with that. Most of our clients are Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. type people anyway. So that works typically. But if I do get those situations where it's 9 o'clock on a Sunday, I know I can pick up the phone and a few minutes later they're going to call me. That's a big thing. And I know all of us here have probably dealt with vendors where you're sitting on phone, waiting for an hour, and you get somebody who's reading off a script. They don't want to deal with that. What did my screen just go off? Did I something wrong? Where's the guy? There you are. Oh, what now? How did hitting the space bar turn that off and on? And why didn't it switch slides? Okay, let's see. Okay, all right, I think we're okay. I don't know why space bar turns it off and on, but so now we get to best practices. The big factor here is communication with your users. Doesn't matter if you're an MSP selling this or an institution rolling it out to your people. Talk to them. Let them know what's happening. Let them know, hey, on this day we're going to go plug a new phone on your desk, and for a week they're both going to be there, and it's okay. And we're going to give you training on this day. Be really upfront about them. You want to also map out your project. It's not terribly complicated, but there's a lot of little things you got to make sure you get done. Did you get the phone bill new enough from the old provider? Have they filled out the port form? Did you have the hardware ordered? Have they been provisioned? Are the extension numbers set up? Are all the telephone numbers in there? All those little things. We actually have a little project checklist for everyone we do that just says, yep, we got the form, here it is, we sent it out, it's been signed, blah, blah, blah. It's just a workflow thing. Then the actual installation. Are you going to have enough network jacks to go around? If not, are you prepared to use the plug in the phone, plug in the computer? Are all phone locations where network jacks are? In a lot of traditional phone systems, there may not be a computer there, especially in retail establishments. Plan ahead, don't be surprised. And then, do you need to use wireless adapters? Have you set up QoS? Have you tested the network? Do you check this stuff before the day you go live? You don't want to have any last-minute surprises. And then we talk about cutover timing. What that basically means is, at one point is the old system going to stop ringing and the new system going to start ringing. With the phone companies, all they'll do is basically say, on Thursday the 27th, between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m., it will change. That's all you're going to get. It could happen at 8, it could happen at 12, or anywhere in between. And one benefit of having both systems there is all I got to tell them is when that one stops ringing and this one starts ringing, you're live. You can plug the old ones. You can take them out. But if you're switching, say in our case, from Vonage to us, and they're using the same phones, we may not have that luxury because we don't know. But we got to change the phones because they got to work. So what we'll do is change a couple of them ahead of time before the port. Verify they're working and testing. Once the port happens, we switch the rest of them over. That way it's minimal interruption. A lot of people say, can I keep my telephone number? Yes. Will there be any downtime? Generally, no. But communicate this information and plan ahead. There's always something that'll happen on a cutover day. It doesn't matter what it is. That phone that was working fine in your test bed doesn't work here. It had an aneurysm. Who knows? Has spares. And we got user training. This is the biggie, especially if you're going from a system that's just a plain old telephone line to a sophisticated system with lines and parking spots and all this other stuff. You can talk to your blue in the face. You can have meetings and classes and all this kind of stuff, but users generally won't listen or they won't do it. So I like to play a game. I'll get everybody in the room or in the office. Everybody sit at your desks. I'm going to make a call into the system. You pick it up. Okay, you transfer the call to here. And I've given them written material, but they won't look at it or do it until they need it. And then on the cutover day, so what this does for you is I'll say, all right, now you put it on Park 1. Now you pick it up on Park 1, transfer it over to this person. Now transfer it to voicemail. Now pick up and put a card on Park 3, and you pick it up over there. That little round robin game took our day of live calls from 3 or 4 to 0, just because they've done it. Because you can say, now make sure you do this, you play with it before we go live, but 99 times out of 100, they're not going to do that. They're just going to wait and then freak out. And lastly, the voicemail and auto attendant stuff. I typically set things up like they were because VoIP systems are very, very flexible. It can be an overwhelming choice situation, a paralysis of choice, so to speak. So I usually just replicate how they are now. And then on the day we install all our stuff, I'll sit down with the decision maker and I'll say, okay, we've set it up like this. Now, is this how you want to keep it? Do you want to maybe set up a time of day routing, or do you want this group of phones to ring first? And if it doesn't answer, then make them and this group of phones ring. You can kind of ease them into the idea, because otherwise it may be a little overwhelming. And especially on a day when there's people moving around and there's desks and phones getting plugged in, it gets a little confusing. So got a few links up here. The VoIP test I mentioned earlier doesn't use Java, doesn't use Flash. It's great. You can run it on anything. Also a nice little VoIP terms, because as I mentioned, there are acronyms and acronyms and acronyms. And yes, the slides will be available. So really just touched on this subject. You could go for days and days getting into the weeds on this stuff. But hopefully you got kind of a basic understanding of what this is, how you can plan for it, and what you can do with it. Anybody have any questions or discussions? Somebody's got to have a question. Come on. There's one.
You were saying about double natting.
Yeah.
How would you do that in a remote situation?
It's kind of hard. Sometimes we can actually, it's a little risky because we're not there, but sometimes you can go into the modem and if you're lucky, there's a button that says bridge mode. You just log into the modem, hit that button, and wait for them to kind of cycle across. If not, it becomes user education kind of thing. Hey, if you're going to have that, take out your router or call your provider and get them to give you a regular one and go to the store, buy one, and work it out. Sometimes we've actually shipped a modem and a router that we've configured to the client and just say, plug this in, and that works.
I'm thinking about if we're using a hosted system and, for example, in my office the power goes out and I'm like, well, just unplug your phone from your desk and go home and plug it into your router. But then, there are people who have like the Comcast router and then they have their own
Yeah, and you know, a lot of times you'll actually get away with it from just a phone call standpoint.
Yeah.
It's only those things like call presence.
Yeah.
That's where you can kind of get issues, because we'll get a call like, "Hey, I can't see when so and so's on the phone." That's usually why.
For a day or two.
Yeah, for like yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyone else with questions? What's that? Can you repeat that for me? I couldn't quite hear. Can you?
Sorry, yes, some VoIP phones support VPN client, typically SSL VPN. So if you wanted to set up a secure, isolated VPN
Yeah.
network that your phone can then VPN into, and then can access your
Yeah.
VoIP provider.
Yeah, that works. And oddly enough, if you actually have an app provided by your VoIP provider on a mobile phone, these are using a different technology. They're not using SIP and RTP. They often don't have call presence, but they work under varied conditions. So in a lot of cases, like we just had those rolling power outages as prevention for fires. We just set a bunch of people up with the app on their phones, and they're fine. Here, do this when the power goes out. And it worked okay. Anybody else? Questions, questions, questions? Going once? I know we're out of time. Going twice? Anything? All right, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate having the chance to talk to you guys. Thanks.